on the panel talking about their retirement community is up here, I guess. There's two people not here yet. This is a meeting of the Hemlock Society of San Diego. Anybody here for the first time? Oh, great. Somebody said to me, oh, you're talking about retirement communities. I thought you'd talk about how to kill yourself. Well, not every time. We've been meeting for 25 years and we occasionally talk about that. Last time we talked about that, but other times we talk about issues that are related to end of life or aging or something like that. So about a year ago, Jack Cummings spoke to us about retirement communities. And it was a very good presentation, and some of us were absolutely, totally confused. My gosh, there's so much to know. And he's been sending me more and more information, and there is a lot to know about this area. So I thought we would just have a meeting of people who live in some of these retirement communities. And I think we're very lucky in San Diego to have a lot of them to choose from. I was talking to a friend in Toronto. She says, we don't hardly have any, and the ones we do have, I don't like. We have a lot of them. So back there are some of these free books that list more of these retirement communities. So just randomly, we have our own members, because we wanted to hear from our own members about their impressions of these communities. So from left to right, Ken Catlin at Frederica Manor, Charles McMahon at St. Paul's, Ken Faisal at La Vida Real, Jack Cummings at Carlsbad by the Sea, Natasha Josephowitz at White Sands, Virginia Austin at Wesley Palms, and Ben Taylor at Paradise, Paradise Village. And we are expecting 2 more people. So I thought instead of making formal speeches, I would just ask people things, and Natasha said, why don't we just find out why people chose to pick the ones they did, and actually why they chose to move into a retirement community at the time they did. That may be the whole meeting, I don't know, because I want to leave plenty of time for you to ask questions and hear our panelists answer it. So since Natasha suggested that idea, I think I'll start with her. The trouble with her is she may give a whole speech, but it'll be a good one.
Here we go for a whole year. When you are young and you think about retirement, what do you see? A beach and a palm tree. Well, I live at White Sands, and outside my window there's a beach and a palm tree. And one of the things that I really like about White Sands is that it is the only community in California that is actually right on the beach. Well, I wanted the usual thing that you all want. I wanted independent living and assisted living and continuing care, so there's a hospital and a dementia center. We were in our 70s, and we have no children here, and even if we did, we didn't want to be a burden on the children. Actually, moving to a retirement community is a gift to your children. I have a belief that people my age, I'm 86, should not live alone. We should live in communities, and in communities which can give you family. My husband died 3 years ago. I never ate alone. So I am very happy where I am. And I'm inviting any one of you to come and have lunch with me at White Sands. Just call me and tell me. Call White Sands, say Natasha, and you'll get me. Okay, that's it. You want to say anything else?
No, it's your boss. I just want to say this. When Jack was here a year ago, he tried to delineate what the retirement communities are, and out of that, I got fairly simple structure. That is, there are CCRCs, continuing care retirement communities, that have the extra services, what Natasha said, the skilled nursing, the memory units, and there's Nancy, good. Nancy Appleton from V. And the assisted living, CCRCs, continuing care retirement communities. Apparently, some of them you pay the extra for the extra services, and some you don't. Then the other places essentially are rentals, and you don't have a buy-in like you do with retirement communities. With all apologies, Jack, I know that's way too simple, but that's what I got out of it after all this research I've done all year. So, Ken Fousel, you have an interesting situation with a partner who needed a particular kind of care. Can you explain what that was and how that's changed your life to move into retirement committee and why you picked La Vida Real?
Okay, when I turned 80 years old, I decided to be better to move into a retirement center while I still could before I had a stroke or had an accident or whatever, and I was more handicapped. And then my partner, my life partner, developed a non-Alzheimer's dementia called frontotemporal dementia. And it's a fairly fast-moving fatal brain disease. And in 2010, we got the diagnosis that she was advancing quite rapidly, and the neurologist said that by the end of the year of 2010, she very well may be in a nursing home. So that really triggered our thought processes. So we very quickly, I sold my house, she sold her house, and we moved into La Vida Real so that we could move in ahead of the disaster. And I firmly believe it's better to move in a year too early than a day too late. Because if you wait too long and you have a stroke or some other physical disability happens, you're not eligible to move into many retirement centers. You have to go into a nursing home. So we looked at a lot of different centers, everything from Oceanside to Tijuana practically, and we found La Vida Real, and it met all of our requirements, expectations. We loved it from the very first minute we walked in, and it has 3 levels. It has independent living, assisted living, and memory care. It does not have a skilled nursing facility, which some of them do, but most of them do not. So it's a fairly good sized place. It has 210 of separate apartments, 400 total residents, 99 assisted living, and 46 memory care. And in the population, there's 48 couples, 38 single men, and 156 single women. So it's about 60-40 for men and women. And the average age is 84. We do have 2 couples, or 2 residents who are over 100. We have one who's 102, another one who just turned 100 this summer. Okay.
Is your partner in the memory unit and you're in independent living? Is that how?
I'm in independent living, yes.
And she's in the memory unit?
Okay, and when she, what happened was last Christmas, she suddenly took a very, very steep decline, and she had to be hospitalized, and then in a psychiatric hospital for about 3 weeks, and we couldn't bring her back. I couldn't bring her home, and our plan was, the main reason we went to La Vida Real was because it had memory care, and we thought, well, I could stay in my own apartment, she could go into memory care. But unfortunately for us, her condition was such that she was so agitated and aggressive and combative that she wasn't eligible to come back into memory care, because memory care was basically for typical Alzheimer's, and she wasn't typical at all. And so we had to look around to find another facility. So I moved her into a special facility in Escondido that could take care of her, and I stayed right where I am in the same apartment. So our best laid plan to move in there so we could have all these things certainly took a left turn. But I'm still very, very happy that we made the decision to move when we did, because we had 2.5 very good years there, and it was totally very, very enjoyable, and we had everything in place in case we needed it.
It's very important to know what happens.
It didn't work out the way we planned.
That's what happens when you get sick. It's very important to know what the alternatives are, and in your case, that didn't work out as you had planned. Charles, you may be the oldest person on the panel. That's a distinction. And Charles is at St. Paul's, which is, Ken, yours is not a buy-in, yours is a rental. Yeah. But it has 2 of the 3 extra facilities.
Did you say where these places are?
Where is La Vida Real?
La Vida Real is in Rancho San Diego. It's south of El Cajon and east of Spring Valley, and it's right on 94, SR 94, where SR 94 becomes Hamishaw Road. If any of you've ever been to Saquon Casino, it's right where the road to Saquon Casino takes off from 94.
And Natasha is in White Sands, which is in La Jolla, as she said, on the beach with the palm trees. But Charles' situation in St. Paul's is different because St. Paul's has a lot of facilities for people who don't have a lot of money. Is that right, Charles? Can you say more? It's a very important institution, St. Paul's, what it does in the city.
I came to St. Paul's because I had prior knowledge of retirement homes. My professional work was in churches and social work, and I visited people in these places, in various places, including La Vida Real and White Sands, and Carlsbad by the Sea, and a few others.
Sure.
And I found that for my needs and my finances, St. Paul's Manor was the most and the best. It's, I lived at St. Paul's Manor, which is near 6th and 5th Avenue and Laurel Street, almost adjacent to Balboa Park. St. Paul's also has other facilities in the downtown area called the Villa, which houses people with needed assisted living and also have a memory unit. We also operate the PACE organization, which provides care for people who are still living at home but need assistance. And they provide transportation and all sorts of services for them. And we also have a daycare center for seniors and children in the downtown area. And the St. Paul's was built in the 1960s, and so it's aging now, but still very comfortable to live in. I happen to be, I was not chosen, but it happened. I have the best apartment in the whole place. I live on the 11th floor. We call it the sky room or the penthouse.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful, absolutely. And I find that I've been there almost 6 years now, and I find it meets all of my needs. And it's, I can't get into the bean counting of dollars for this and dollars for that, but it is, I consider economical compared to when I was a householder out in Talmadge. I spent more money every month taking care of things, and now I spend more money being taken care of. That's very nice. Any questions before I...
Well, Steve, Charles described the St. Paul's model, which is unique in this city. And it may be nationally, I don't know, but it has all these other services for people that, not just the residential. So it's really a very excellent service that there is. Let me just go to Ken Catlin down there at Frederica Manor. If I have this correct, Ken, you moved into a retirement community right from working, and your job stopped.
Yes.
And you are still working. You're doing things for Rhodes Scholars, for example. So how does that work out, and how are you? How did you decide to move into a retirement community so soon after your job stopped?
Well,
and tell where it is.
I live in Frederica Manor, which is in Chula Vista on 3rd Avenue. It's a by-the-month community. There's no upfront fees. It's very nice. And it's also economical. You can get a studio for a very low price there, or you can have a penthouse apartment and pay quite a bit more, because there is a 10-story tower. But to get back to your question, Faye, I was working, yes, up until a year ago, and I suddenly had to make a move because the property that I was living in was sold out from under me. And I had about 30 days to make a decision what to do. I'm 77 years old. I wasn't quite ready to move into a retirement community, but I said, better soon than later, better sooner than later, so I decided to do it. And this is an economical place for me to live. I can still continue to work part-time. I take the meals at the dining room there when I choose to. I don't have to take the meals when I'm away working or traveling. So I find that it's been very good. The longer that I've been there, which is now more than 1 year, the more I've grown to like it. And I think it has a lot of the features that Charles just mentioned. Plus, it is a 4-stage care community. It has independent living, assisted living, a care center with skilled nursing, plus a memory unit. So it covers all of the bases if you're interested in going that far, which I hope I don't.
It's good to know. Okay, so we heard from 3 people here who live in rental facilities, and we heard from Natasha, who lives in a buy-in, a CCRC. And Nancy Appleton just walked in. She's on the edge there. Not on the edge, but she's on the end of the table. And she lives in V, which is, maybe you can describe where V is, Nancy, and why you picked that one, and how that's different from what Ken just described from Frederica Manor.
V is right next to UC San Diego, up there on the hill, and that was one of the reasons I chose it, because I love going to school. But I find that at V, there are so many activities, so many lectures of people they bring over from UC San Diego, that I really wouldn't have to leave there and get everything I want. But besides, they have ping pong clubs and singing clubs and the rest of it too. But it's a wonderful place to live. I chose that because there are 500 people there now. They can go up to about 700 depending on singles or couples. And I'm sort of weird. I'm a writer. I live a slightly different life. And I thought, you know, with only 100, 150 people, I might not find anybody I like. So I like the idea of having all these people around that I could find. And there's marvelous people, I will say, on both sides. And I love living there. I'm on the 11th floor. You buy into it, but you don't own it. It's still an apartment, so somebody else takes care of it. And you pay a monthly fee for your TV and your cleaning lady and your almost everything, your telephone, etc. And that's how, and then you pay a monthly fee. So.
But then if you need assisted living or memory care or skilled nursing, you don't pay, right?
Right. They have all those things. They take you right to the end. And once you've paid your entry fee, that's all you pay besides your monthly fee. So that you never pay more for any of those. And, you know, it's sort of a coin flop whether you'll need those facilities or not. And, you know, so far I'm still young yet, but I've got a long ways to go, I hope. And I hope I don't have to use those. But no, you pay not 1 penny more. Some people have, what's the word I want? Insurance, what's the word?
Long-term care insurance.
Long-term care insurance.
Yeah.
You can apply for that. They send you a check, and then you can use that any way you want. So some people have continued to have that. I'm not sure why, but they do. But they do get a check if you're in assisted living or in some area other than your room. You can use your long-term care insurance.
So that is a CCRC, and as I understand, CCRC's Jack knows more about this than I do. There's CCRC's 1, where you don't pay extra for these services, and CCRC 2, which you do. Natasha, which is yours, do you know? Or is that?
We pay in an entrance fee, and it's less than you think. I'm sorry. We pay an entrance fee, it's less than you think. For instance, a studio, you come in with $60,000, then it's $2,000 a month, and that includes 3 meals a day made and everything. What happens is that you lose 20% a year, and after 5 years you have no equity. So the longer you live, the cheaper it is. So it pays to live a long time. By the way, I don't know if you know the statistics. People who live in retirement communities live 7.5 years longer than people who live isolated.
But the question about using the extra facilities there, do you pay?
There's a slightly higher fee if you move on to assisted or continuing care, but it's not very much.
Where is it?
Where it is, we're
White
at the
Sands.
We're at the bottom of Pearl. You come into my pub and you fall into the ocean.
She's a good swimmer. Next to Nancy is Ben Taylor, who lives in Paradise. I can't beat that. We have a few brochures in the back. I don't know if you have any, but there was a very nice full-page ad in the Union Tribune from Paradise Village, so it looks like a very nice establishment. Ben is a pianist, and does that give you plenty of opportunity to express yourself creatively there, Ben? And what kind of place is it, and where is it?
Yes, it is. It does give me a chance to play a lot. It's located in National City, which National City is north of Chula Vista and just south of San Diego. It's new. It's about 3 years old, and you pay I pay $1,500 to move in. After that, it's month to month, and we have 2 levels of care: the active living and assisted living. Anything more comprehensive than that, you go elsewhere. And I wondered how management handled that situation. That is, if somebody became infirm and they just couldn't manage on their own, what happened? What was it? And so I asked. I got one of the directors and tried to draw her out about things like that. And it was a lady, and she was very skillful in kind of avoiding my direct questions. For example, I asked her one time, I said, what would you do if I announced that I was going to not refuse all food and water? You know, if I had lived long enough and I wanted to refuse food and water. And she looked at me and she says, Ben, in 33 years of being in this business, I have never had that question before. So we continued to talk, but I was not able to pin her down on anything about end-of-life decisions. They handle it, and they handle it well, because I haven't heard any grumbling about things like that. Oh, to get back to the facilities, we have room for 400 people. There are about 300 residents now. I moved in about maybe a year and a half ago. We had 200 people there then. So we've added 100 in the last year and a few months, and we are actively seeking new members. As to facilities, it's got we have 2 directors of activities, and they keep all the residents busy with doing just about anything they could possibly want. We have a fully equipped gym with 3 attendants on duty. We have a large saltwater swimming pool and jacuzzi. We have a putting green and all kinds of other activity rooms. There's a Catholic Mass weekly. There's a Protestant service and a Jewish service. The land is owned by the Seventh-day Adventist church, but they do not proselytize. There's a resident chaplain there who is a Seventh-day Adventist, and he's a very pleasant gentleman, and he doesn't aggressively push his religion. I don't know if I've answered.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Ben. Since you're in Paradise anyway, they don't have to push much. Virginia here is at Wesley Palms, which is an interesting layout because a lot of people like Virginia live in little cottages, and it is basically a rental. Is that right, Virginia? What else goes on? You've been there a long time.
I've been there a long time. I'm a single lady. I decided I didn't want to be found dead on the kitchen floor, and I don't regret having moved into Wesley Palms. One thing I want to point out is that you hear all the people here say something very important. They love it. Most of us love where we live. So I think the industry has found a way to make it work. We're all different from each other, but they do their best to keep us very happy, very comfortable. At Wesley Palms, we have a lot of choices. I have a beautiful cottage. They will have to drag me kicking and screaming from it. I have a view of the ocean. We're 2 miles away from there. We have all the activities that you've heard described in the other places. We have assisted living and independent living. And we are building a memory care unit. When we're full, we'll be about 380 people. And we've been full, but you know what the situation has been recently. Everybody has room for new residents. I would like to advise you to ask very careful questions and to think carefully about the questions you want to ask, because we are all different and what you're looking for needs to be spelled out very carefully. For those of you thinking of high-rise, I would like to warn you about one thing. Think about the elevator. You will encounter persons who will invent every possible way to make problems on the elevator. So decide whether you want to experience that. One other thing I'll say before I stop. I think what the lesson we need to learn is patience. No matter how slow you are, it's the people who are slower who drive you nuts. And no matter how active you are, you wonder why other people aren't taking part in all these wonderful activities. You find out as you get older. So you need a great deal of patience. I love every minute of my life there. I've been there 18 years, so you know I'm 150 years old.
Location?
This is Wesley Palms in Pacific Beach on Loring Drive, 2 miles from the ocean, very close to Garnett. Garnett has everything in the world that you need. We have transportation to get there.
Thanks, Virginia. Remember the PBS series Waiting for God? How many of you remember that? Yeah. So that was a retirement situation, and one of the things that happened there was they were always having trouble with their manager, whoever he was, and also with other residents. And Jack's done a lot of research on management and the inequities of management, and et cetera. And so I was going to ask you, Jack is at Carlsbad by the Sea. He'll tell you about it. It's a CCRC. And maybe you could address this question of management, Jack. I know it's something you know a lot about.
Should I use this mic or that might be? First, how many of you live in the CCRC now, or in a retirement community? Just my wife. And she lives there with me, so that's nice. How many of you would actually ever consider that kind of life? Well, quite a few. One of the common things that comes across here, and I want to support it, is that people who live in congregate living are very glad they do. You know, those of you who went to colleges and had the experience of living in a dormitory know that you learned as much from your fellow students as you did from the professors. And that somehow ends, I think, because it's hard to raise children in that kind of collective environment. So we tend to favor single-family houses set squarely in the middle of a plot of land to maximize the distance from our neighbors. And there's a certain alienation in that, but that's overcome with the congregate living that you can get from a retirement community. So and people have talked about, you know, the carefree lifestyle. You get most of them, you get your meals, there are activities, people don't always take advantage of it. And one of the most important things is that they tolerate you for the rest of your life, even when you might become unpleasant or disagreeable or curmudgeonly. And so
that's sort of the question I was asking about. What happens when there's disagreeable people there? And also about the management. What if you don't get along with the management? And how about how much money the management makes?
Well, that's part of it. My professional background is as an actuary, so I worked in the insurance industry. And I just assumed that residents in these retirement communities would, and I live in one which has very large entrance fees. We paid roughly $500,000 to move in, all of which is forfeit after 6 years. So we've lived there 6 years. So if we were to leave, we would just simply forfeit the entire amount of money that's been paid in.
That's true for Natasha, true for Nancy, right?
Well, that's true for a few. I was looking here in the Front Porch Group, which I'm most familiar with. Wesley Palms, Frederica Manor, and Casa de Mañana were part of Pacific Homes. Pacific Homes was a retirement community with entrance fees, and it went bankrupt in the 1970s, and the residents there lost their entire investment. And they were allowed to stay on, but the bankruptcy court ruled that those communities could only be run as rental communities, which is why they're now run as rental communities. And so those people who had put their savings in there, maybe they didn't have the resources, those people had to move out. So there are financial risks, and the Senate inquiry, the Senate Committee on Aging, under Senator Cole, had a hearing into the CCRC industry, which they entitled, I forget, positive benefits but risky choice or something. And there is risk. So I think people need to be aware of that risk and be sure that they can take it. Now, the question that you started with was, why do you live where you live? And I moved in when I was, 69 or 70. And I wanted to be sure that my wife was in a place where she'd be well provided for if something were to happen to me. And I think, Natasha, was it you who mentioned that you lost your husband and you never were alone? And that was something that I wanted for my wife. So that was a major factor for us. We chose the community where we live because of its location. Now, Natasha said that White Sands is the only one on the beach, but we went to White Sands and we talked to the marketing fellow there, and I wanted to know about La Costa Glen. That was a huge project coming on stream at the time, and so I figured if you want to know the negative about an outfit, you want to hear the other side, ask the competitors. So I asked the marketing fellow at White Sands, who are your competitors? Thinking he was going to say La Costa Glen, tell me the downside. Well, he said, you know, if I were the marketing fellow at Carlsbad by the Sea, I wouldn't have to lift a finger. Those places just sell themselves. They do there what we should have done. They had an old hotel, and it needed to be replaced, so they just tore it down and built a whole new place that's dedicated to retirement living. And so that very day, while we were still staying in a bedroom at White Sands, my wife and I drove up to Carlsbad, and we've sort of been there ever since. So that's how these decisions get made. Now, financially, we don't have a Type A contract. The Type A contract is the all-inclusive contract. And Front Porch has decided not to offer those contracts anywhere. And so that's a negative. Now, there's no reason why they couldn't offer them, because financially, these things are all mathematically equivalent. If they employed actuaries in the field, we'd tell them how to do it. And we could even get them reinsurance so they wouldn't have to take the risk. But they're not, the managers are not that sophisticated on financial matters and contract matters. They're very good at providing compassionate care and activities and a wonderful living environment. But in terms of handling the money, that's another matter, and that's something that you need to be aware of. And you can look at the material from the Senate, you can look at the material put out by the National...
You personally, about your own management, how you get along with your management, and what role you have in the management of Carlsbad.
Well, I personally have in the management of Carlsbad.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have, it's owned by Front Porch, which is a not-for-profit corporation. So I'm not an owner. I mean, if you're a tenant, how much say do you have in the management of your landlord? So I don't know whether is that your question? I'm not sure I understand the question or what you want, what you're hoping I'll say.
Well, first of all, you told me how much money your manager gets, which seemed like an extraordinary amount of money. But secondly, I'm thinking about waiting for God, where they were always having trouble with their manager there, who was sort of a buffoon, if I recall. But Natasha wants to say something about it because she has a little more say in what happens at White Sands than the ordinary person does.
If you come to White Sands and you lose all your money, we keep you. We have a very large endowment fund. It's called a benevolence fund. We are non-profit, so that once you come in, you never leave. We keep you. There's about half a dozen people there who are living for free. Nobody knows who they are. And so, I mean, you can gamble all your money away and you can still stay there. But I do want to say something that...
I'd like to add something to that, though, when you're finished.
I finish first. Okay. One of the obstacles all of you have about moving is what do I do with all this stuff? And I want to give you one strategy. Because every time you give away something, the memory with that object also goes. That's why it's so hard to get rid of things. This is what you do. You take a photo of the object, you keep the memory, and you get rid of the object. Strategy. Okay.
By the way, there's one panelist who's sitting in the audience. She shouldn't be here, but
Oh.
Eugenia, can you get up here?
I wanted to just add that Natasha indicated that at White Sands they keep you in residence even if your funds run out. That's required by the IRS under Revenue Ruling 72-124 of all nonprofit retirement communities. They all do it. They're not required to do it from their business operations. If they can persuade donors to fund a benevolent fund, they're allowed to use the benevolent fund. But if they don't have a benevolent fund, they're required to do it out of their business operations. It's a requirement for them to keep their nonprofit standing. And the for-profit communities voluntarily do that. So there's, once you're admitted, you have to move in, you have to establish that you've got sufficient funds that it's probable that you'll be okay. So they're required then to keep you even if your funds run out.
I'd like to say.
Well, all of them do. Well, they're not all the same. Like, you know, if it's just a standalone assisted living, you know, that's like if you lived into a rental community with a lot of old people living there. You know, you don't get any special guarantees. But if it's a not-for-profit home for aged people, formed for that purpose.
No, B is not a not-for-profit, and they keep you till the end. Too.
Yeah, that's right. So all the for-profit ones do it voluntarily.
By the way, there's a lot of other facilities, as Jack says, for aged people. We don't talk about ourselves that way. But board care, for example, we're not talking about that. We're not talking about nursing homes. We're not talking about standalone assisted living today. I mean, we can in the future because all of these are options. So we're talking about residential communities. I found Eugenia Cutler. She was hiding in the audience. And she knows, she doesn't live there, but she knows about Pacific Regions, which is an interesting structurally, a little different from the other places. And Will, you should help her because you're thinking about moving in there, but. You have a mic, Eugenia? Yeah, tell a little bit about Pacific Regions and the experiences you had. Eugenia's mother lived there. She doesn't live there herself.
Can you hear me?
No.
Now?
Yes.
I can hear myself. Okay, so it is a different situation because I don't live there. My mother, I brought my mother from Mexico when she was 88 already, and it was a big change for her. We chose the place because it was the only place where she could bring some of her furniture that she didn't want to part with. She wanted an apartment, not a small place with a kitchenette. She really wanted to feel that it's not a big difference and it's large enough, which she only had one bedroom, and it is the smallest unit in Pacific Regent. She also wanted, it was important for me to have her there because it was close to me and because it was such a perfect location. She could walk to different places. She could walk to the two malls around it, and it's in University City, and it's very close to V, I think, and very much a similar type of place, a high-rise. The difference is that you buy, and there were two ways of buying. You buy it, you totally buy it, or you buy part of it, like half of it, and your inheritance, the person that inherits you gets half of what you paid when you die. So I think it's very good business for the people that had it before. And it was based on your death, so some people couldn't leave it because it was based on their death. It doesn't have, it was going to have the 3 levels when my mother moved in. Oh, I just want to finish saying she lived there till she was 100. So she lived there 12 years, so we really got some experience there. And of course I was taking care of everything, so I know more about it than my mother knew. So she was going to get the 3 levels, they were going to have the 3 levels, and it didn't happen. It doesn't, I don't know if anybody's mentioned it, but there is no nursing available there. If you're sick, you have to call somebody from the outside. There is a nursing place next to Pacific Regent, but it's totally independent. The owners of the 2 buildings are the same company, but they operate it totally separately, and there is some confusion with dining room and things like that. But it's, you don't have a direct access to the nursing home. I think some of the people there are very happy. And everybody that I know there is happy, and everybody's saying, so everybody's happy here. I think what is wonderful are the activities. They have a great set of activities. They have very good transportation. They take you to UCSD, they take you to all the things you need, they take you to the doctors. The problems are the parking. There is not enough parking for everybody, and it's a big problem. They usually use valet parking for everything. I have a list. I brought a number of things for you to look at if you want to, and among theirs included all the things that they offer with your monthly assessment. And that brings us to the cost. What my mother basically was paying, which is the lowest cost, is $2,000 a month, more or less, for her assessment, and all that it includes, that you know, a cleaning service and other things, and you can look at the
Was that with meals, Eugenia? Did she take her meals there?
So the meals are separate. You have to pay, you have to accept, you decide what kind of plan you want. So they have a 5-meal plan a month, or 15 or 30, and they just added a 10. And when it's like a contract, when you get into whatever contract you get into, it's very hard to change, but you can't change after some time. So if you want to reduce it, you have a hard time, like you have to wait 3 months to be able to get your plan lower. The cost, I think, is one of the minuses, at least for me. You may judge it differently. I find it terribly expensive, and I find that there are too many extras. And my problem with Pacific Regent is that they started charging $300 to every person that had a full-time caregiver. And I need to let you know, I have been fighting them, and there is a suit, and my apartment is has a lien since my mother died because I didn't agree with paying the caregiver fees. So I'm just letting you know that.
Eugenia, they permit somebody to come 24 hours, but they charge $300 or a month.
No, they lowered it, they decided to lower it. I think all the decisions have been totally arbitrary and not justified, how much they're charging. And they have lowered it, and they also charge according to how much time the caregiver is there. And they are charging everybody just for having a caregiver.
Yeah, I think this is a very important point because sometimes you think about the residential community as an alternative to home health care. Home health care, as some of you know, is a can of worms, which we'll discuss one of these days. It's very confusing, even more confusing than choosing a retirement community. But they're not necessarily alternatives because, as Ken found out and other people, that if you get sick in your premises, you may need a home health care person. So Eugenia's gripe with Pacific Regions is that they charge for such a person to live there. And at V, Nancy, you can't have a full-time home health care person there, right?
12 hours.
12 hours, without a charge. Yeah. So if you need somebody for the other 12 hours, you're sort of out of luck. You would have to go to another step up or something like that. Yeah.
Hey, could I add something to the Pacific region?
You may, Will. You know, I think we can throw it open. There's so many variations and permutations here.
I'm Will Whiteley, and recently I went over to Pacific region to check it out and see what's going on. Essentially, I discovered that it's sort of like the best hotel you ever spent your time in. It is beautiful, it is expensive. However, one nice thing is that it is a buy-in. You actually buy your apartment and it's yours.
That's not what generally is called a buy-in.
You don't buy in, you buy.
You buy.
Yeah, a buy-in is different.
Yeah, it is not a buy-in. You actually purchase the apartment. It's like a condo, and you can sell it later on. And right now, the prices are very, very reasonable, I've discovered, because of the real estate situation. But there is a monthly fee. As Eugenia said, hers was about $2,000. I think now it's about $2,500. Yes, and it does not include meals. However, the restaurant there is absolutely first class. I mean, it's like the finest restaurant you've ever been in. The meals are reasonable. As I recall, dinners are like $15 and lunches are 10 or something.
They're the same.
And pardon?
They're the same.
They're the same?
Oh,
yeah, anyway. So that does increase the price some, but they have all kinds of facilities. They do have exercise, they have a swimming pool, they have a salon there for hair treatment and pedicure and manicure. So it does have everything that you might want, but I just wanted to add that to what you said.
I think we could stipulate that, and stop me if I'm wrong here, that all these facilities have pretty good food. Some have excellent food. They're fairly gracious looking. They have activities, some more than others. They have bus service. I'm not sure about yours. Ken, yours has too, yeah. And does yours, Charles, have bus service, St. Paul's? Any bus service?
Yeah.
Bus transportation? Yeah. And the difference seems to be whether there's the extra facilities, the assisted living, the memory care, and the skilled nursing, and whether it's a buy-in or not. But as far as these extras go, everybody seems very satisfied with the extras that are included. It's I call it the aging industrial complex. There's going to be a lot of us, and we need to house ourselves. Sure, our kids don't want us, so so this is going to be it's very competitive. Question back there.
Yes, I'm unfamiliar with the term buy-in. Is that when you pay your money and then lose it at the end?
A buy-in is when you pay your money and lose it at the end. Yeah, sort of like that. Natasha,
You better explain that, hadn't you?
This is how it works. Once, for instance, let's say for one room studio, you pay your 60,000. You lose 20% a year. But after 5 years, when you have no equity left, if you live in the middle, for instance, somebody just left to live with their children, and they gave them back to $100,000 because there was a very expensive $300,000 one. So you get your money back if you leave before 5 years. After 5 years, you have no equity, but $2,000 a month, 3 meals a day by an incredible chef. The limo is free, takes you everywhere. We have a bus that goes to all of the plays, La Jolla Playhouse, Old Globe, Symphony. We are not culturally deprived. We are the most fun place. We are a stationary cruise ship.
So, Nancy, yours is a buy-in. How does V work?
We buy in, and the cheapest one today is $200,000, and that's a one-bedroom. And they go all the way up from 700 feet to 3,000 feet. And once you buy in, again, it's over 5 years. If you leave before then, you get some money back. After that, you get none of that money back. But again, we have all assisted living. We've got the whole shebang. You don't go anywhere else once you get there. And then we have a monthly fee too that we have to pay.
How much is your monthly fee?
Well, it starts about $3,500. Depending on the square footage, what? Yes, includes food, fabulous food.
It sounds as if each of us is saying, we're the best, we're the best. I don't like that tone. We all are excellent. We all have our own personality. What you want to look for is the personality and the tone that suits you. There are some very friendly places. There are other very quiet, dignified places. They all offer a great deal of the many things you've heard. You need to sense what's going on at the particular place. They're all wonderful. I haven't met anybody who doesn't say, I love this life. I'm very happy here. So that's a wonderful promise to you. You need to look to see what suits you. And there are levels, and there are levels of activity, but they all offer what you've heard. We all offer very much the same things. And we shouldn't be competing like this. We should be endorsing each other.
Does that answer your question about what a buy-in is? I mean, the buy-in is premised on a large amount of money initially, and sort of requires that you sell your house.
Most people don't use the term buy-in because you're not buying anything. It's an entrance fee. The entrance fee, some of the more modern providers are offering refundable entrance fees. And that sounds like you get your money back if you die, but the organization is not committing to return that money to you. It's generally made contingent on the resale of that unit to another buyer. So when you move into a unit, you pay an entrance fee for a unit that was occupied by somebody. The money you pay goes to the heirs of that prior person. It's not going to be used for you. And that's not one of the areas that needs to be reformed, so that when you pay an entrance fee for a lifetime contract, the entrance fee is used to benefit you under that contract. That's something that we're working on in the National Continuing Care Residence. Now, V is a little, not V, La Costa Glen is a little different. La Costa Glen, which is a for-profit community in Carlsbad, in that part of Carlsbad that is down near Encinitas, there, the owners, because it's for profit, so they put up the equity money. In most of these nonprofit ones, the equity capital, the at-risk capital, are the entrance fees. So the residents' money is what's at risk. There, the partners put up the money, and the entrance fees are under a deed of trust, so that if that community were ever to fail, the ownership would pass to the residents. That's not true in most nonprofit communities. The residents are simply unsecured general creditors. Now, in a community like Wesley Palms or Casa or Frederica Manor, which is a rental, well, you're just paying month to month. You can move out anytime if you don't like it. That's certainly a very positive thing. Some of those communities have had an occupancy challenge, and that's raised the costs for the people who are there a little bit because you have to carry the cost of the vacant apartment. So there's a lot of ramifications to the financial and contractual things that vary widely and are of critical importance, and there's a need for a better regulatory structure for this. For example, if you have a life insurance policy and the life insurance company goes bankrupt, the other companies in the industry are assessed so that you are not disadvantaged at all and you don't lose the money that you've invested in that life insurance or annuity contract. That does not apply to CCRCs. The bondholders are paid before the residents. The residents are the lowest on the totem pole in the bankruptcy of a CCRC. They're unsecured general creditors and no more.
Yeah, this is all the stuff that Jack told us a year ago that's made us completely shuddering in our boots. Charles, did you want to add something here?
Can I finish?
Oh, yeah. Didn't you? I'm sorry, Junior.
No, I wasn't finished.
Oh, sorry.
So I think that it's important to say that it's not just a whatever. My family came from Mexico and they said, this is the best 5-star hotel I've ever seen. It is very impressive. It is very luxurious. I would like to compare some things with Wesley Palms. Like for instance, if we have anything extra, it's charged quite expensively. And you asked about how to adjust to the community, and I think that if you go there, it's very welcoming. They have wonderful activities. If you join a committee, then you will really get into things, and I think that's very important. The management is a mixture that I don't understand what they represent, if they represent the owners or the homeowners or the owners of the building, the company, and then there's a management company, and it's all very mixed. So it wasn't that way before, now it's a mess. And some of the things they were saying, I think that's it.
Charles, did you want to say something?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd like to change the subject. This finance is very important to all of us because that's what we live on. But my experience has been, all my life I've been in human services. The last 50 years, I've been professional dealing with crisis intervention and the predicaments of the human being. And the subject comes up here without being addressed. In all of these retirement communities, when you get a bunch of people together, there are conflicts which develop. And the management of conflict is very difficult under the conditions which exist when people think they own something, or people think they have a right to something which is not in the contract. And then rumors start, and big arguments is one thing. The other thing that comes up is at St. Paul's Manor, people who apply for residence there are interviewed to make financial statements and have medical records presented. But to the best extent that I know, they do not do a psychological profile of anyone. And consequently, from my experience, I've been living there almost 6 years now, I see the problems come up between people who are, to say, unstable mentally for various reasons. It happens. It also happens while people are living there. I see people fading away. I'm familiar with people dying. I'm familiar with people being taken away by force. I'm not involved in it, but I'm aware of it. And found the management doesn't exactly consult with me, but I talk with them when I observe some difficult situation coming up in the dining room or in the elevator, as you mentioned. I haven't observed too much of that in our elevators, but I do observe these conflicts, and the difficulty arises when somebody is borderline. They have legal rights to stay there because we're under an administration of FUD, which sets rules for occupancy and management and benefits. But then it comes down to the fine point when somebody just doesn't get along with everybody, or they can cause discomfort to many people by outrageous behavior, or setting fires in a room, or smoking, or sexual escapades. Laugh about it, we're people. And I've been deep in this business for a long time. I think I've observed everything that somebody can do, or try to do, and they do happen. And management becomes very difficult, whereas at the manor, they're very gentle. We have a basis of Christian love. That's a metaphor for helping people get along with other people. And still, there come times when people do have to be removed from the place. And there have been a time or two when I've assisted with my background knowledge of helping management.
Yeah, I think we need to get on to the subject. Just how many of you have had experience with difficult people in your residence? Difficult people.
We are resident run. We have 48 committees, and so we run the place. We have no conflicts.
Anyway, let's go.
Could I say one thing?
Well, we really need to go to questions, Charles.
Just for 10 years, I was a jail chaplain, and I see great similarities between life in jail and life in retirement.
I want to just share one quick story from an Alzheimer's unit. In an Alzheimer's unit, they find that they have to task people. So this fellow is, I heard the story from the medical director of an Alzheimer's unit. And this lady moved in, and she had been a nurse in a skilled nursing facility. So she arrived in the Alzheimer's unit. She said, well, I know what kind of a place this is. So she went into work, and she was changing the beds and everything. This was creating a tremendous problem for them. So they gave her one of these pads and said, you have to take notes on rounds. So she now goes around with them on rounds, and she takes the notes. And then they had a fellow move in, and he had been a gynecologist. And he looked around and said, I know where I am. So they had to promote him to professor, and now he just gives lectures in his shop.
A lot of questions. First question.
I'm wondering if you know the attitude of these different facilities towards self-deliverance on their premises.
Yes, very important question. What's the attitude of these individual facilities about self-deliverance on the premises? I think that is what makes our membership a little unique here, and does anybody have an answer to that?
Yeah, that was one of the things that I forgot to mention. And I think that basically since you have caregivers, because that's the only way, this is independent living, but the only way to continue living in Pacific region is having caregivers, and which they don't like. But at the end, like with my mother, you get hospice, and that's the way they handle it. But I want to tell you that even if you get hospice and you can't go down for meals or you can't use the meals, you still have to pay for them. And that when my mother died, I still have had to pay the monthly fees, even though nobody's living there, the full monthly fees. And there are many apartments empty because there are so many problems. And mine was one, and it really cost a lot.
Your mother essentially stopped eating and drinking. Is that what I remember, Eugenia?
No, she at the very end when she was dying, she stopped. She didn't intentionally stop eating, but at the end, I thought that stopping eating was a decision, and I realized that it's not a decision, that it happens, that's the body's decision, not the person's decision. And I think many people don't realize that, and it's important. And hospice didn't help to hasten her death, but also having the caregivers didn't help me do anything. It was a hindrance.
Anybody have any ideas about self-deliverance, Nancy?
Well, I was just going to say, at B, we work with...
Talk into the mic, Nancy.
Oh, yeah. We work with hospice, and whether you live in continuing care or you're still in your apartment, they will do that, and they will also read any directive you have and can follow that for sure. And we don't have those bills. Once the person passes away, you don't get paid until somebody else buys that apartment, but you don't have any other fee.
So self-deliverance could occur if we ever had access to pills. I mean, that would be one way to do it, and that would be fairly simple. Another way would be to do it through helium, and that could be done unless somebody discovered your helium tanks and raised an issue, I guess. And the other way would be refusal of food and hydration. So there was, not recent, but last year, a case, I think, in New Mexico of a couple who was refusing food and hydration, and they were asked to leave their retirement community. And so their son rented a house for them, stayed with them until they died. And that's raised a lot of questions about whether they have a right to intervene when you're stopping eating and drinking. And I asked Jack this question, and he said, what right do they have, essentially, to decide whether you're going to eat and drink?
Well, I don't think the administration of the facility gets involved in it one way or another. If you were to actively seek to take your lives, they have a fiduciary responsibility to sort of protect you from yourself. The question is, what represents a legitimate reason to do it? For example, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid. Under Medicare and Medicaid, you're only entitled to a semi-private room in a skilled nursing facility. So at the end of your life, when you find that you're going to be permanently in a skilled nursing facility, by government mandate, you're deprived of the dignity of your privacy that you've had all your life, and you're required to share your room with no barrier with another person who you may never have met, who may be in terrible condition, and that's a requirement from the federal government. So we had a case of a man who moved from assisted living to skilled nursing, and he raised the question, is this to be my permanent home? And the nurses told him, well, they're no longer able to care for you in assisted living, so yes, you will be here for the rest of your life. And he said, well, I'm a physician. And he was a physician. I found out at his funeral that he delivered over 3,600 babies. He was a typical family physician from Riverside. He said, I know what to do. He was dead within 10 days. The reason was the loss of privacy mandated by the federal government.
Well, wait a minute, you can pay more at B and have a single room. You only get paid for half.
Oh, sorry.
Natasha said her husband stopped eating and drinking, there was no problem. Could you say more?
He had prostate cancer, it was metastasized to bone, he was in pain, and he decided that he didn't want to live anymore. And so he was in our continuing care, which is on the 4th floor, and I live on the 1st floor, which was really nice. We didn't have to send him anywhere. I could visit him, all day long. And he said, I'm going to stop eating and drinking, and I gave him little ice chips, and all the nurses there were very helpful in helping this process, and he died peacefully in a room alone.
Can you segue into Frontline?
so I didn't.
No, I don't want to talk about the, Will's asking about the frontline film, but I think there are a lot of questions here on the retirement communities. I'd like to talk about a lot of things like the Massachusetts move, but no. Question back there.
Actually, a comment. My father-in-law and mother-in-law are at Sunrise in Bonita, and when we were doing surveying of various places throughout the county, most of them charged $500, $600, $700 a month per person for handling medication. So the two of them, and she has Alzheimer's, so their joint bill was running right at $10,000 a month. And he since passed, and he was under hospice care and was very nicely cared for. And now she's in the memory care unit, and the bill is something like $7,000 a month for her. So folks are just, I don't know how people afford it. Fortunately, they have funds, but it's really, it's financial.
It's a very good point. I think we're talking at one level about what it's like if you're a healthy person living at these places, which sounds like it's great. But then Ken Fausel raised the issue of his partner having to leave the place because there was not accommodation for the kind of situation she was in. So I think that's another level of question is what happens if you really get sick and have to leave your unit and you want to die and all these questions. And how much does it cost extra to have these extra services? Can get quite expensive. Joni.
I have heard that in some of these units that are buy-ins or whatever you want to call them, where you put the money up front, that if they have the different levels, that the management can assess you, and because they want to get you out of the unit that you purchased and maybe into an assisted care, that sometimes they decide to move people, tell them they're not competent to be in independent living, then they have to go to assisted living. Is there any veracity to that?
That's really an interesting question.
She's not there now.
Who determines when you get transferred to a different level of care is the question.
Transfers is what you're talking about is called transfers, when you're moved from one level of care. The typical CCRC historically had 3 levels of care: independent living, assisted living, and skilled nursing. Now they've added memory care because we've suddenly discovered that we all have memory problems. But anyway, there is a process in California law governing that, and but ultimately the executive director of the facility has the final say. They're required to consult with the family, with the physician, with a clergyman if that's wished. It has to be fully documented, but and my experience is that they're very reluctant to require people to move. We have a close friend who's deteriorated to the point where she clearly needs assisted living, but she doesn't accept that, and they're doing everything they can to sustain her, so to try to encourage her to consider what her need is, but they don't want to force her against her will. There was a case, the Harriet case concerning Channing House. If there are any lawyers in the room, they can look up Harriet versus Channing House, and you'll see that the right of the facility to require people to transfer to the level of care that's suited to what their need is upheld in the law in California. So they do have the right to do that. Now, if you stay on your own, in your own house, you may end up as my uncle and aunt did. They were, the neighbors noticed that the papers were piling up at the door, so they called the police. Police came in, found them lying on the floor. They were dehydrated, and they'd been there for several days. At that point, then you become taken over by Adult Protective Services, and you're moved to a place that you may not want to be. And it's a very similar kind of thing. It's a forced transfer. It's exactly the same thing. So that's just inherent in the nature of things. People don't always do what's the most self-realizing thing, and sometimes there has to be an intervention. You just hope that it's done responsibly.
I see a hand attached to a red sweater.
Okay, the red sweater will speak.
all of your facilities are slightly different, yet my understanding, and I work in long-term care in a medical setting, is that you all the facilities have to adhere to California state licenses. And they have to be able, as Jack said, to provide specific levels of care that are suited to your specific needs. Do all of your facilities also require the physician's report before you're even accepted for admission, so that the facility can look at your medical needs, your medications, any past history of psychiatric or memory disorders, any of those things? Is that common with all the
So
facilities?
that's two questions as I understand it. Are all the facilities required to provide different levels of care? And clearly not. I mean, there are facilities here that we've talked about.
That's what I said.
Only have independent living.
They're all different, but they still have to adhere to California state licensing standards for each kind of facility.
Yeah, there has to be a suitability examination.
So the suitability examination is the second part of it. And has everybody gone through that? Virginia, you suitable? Yeah. You were suitable 19 years ago. Are you still suitable?
Yes.
Yes. But what if they decide you're not?
That's their decision.
Oh, their decision? They move you out to where?
They move you to the level that you fit. And if it's not in your community, people usually move out to a community that can accommodate. Because we don't have any nursing facilities, so you go to a nursing facility. And usually, if you don't decide, or they don't decide, or the families, one of those has to decide.
This woman's been trying to ask a question forever. I just wanted to get someone to see her.
I know. Yeah, I know. Jean maybe's been looking into these things for years and years.
That's right, to help friends and neighbors. And what I discovered was that there's a lot of people that think, I don't need that yet, and so they don't start researching it. My recommendation is research it about 3 years before you think you're going to want to move. But also, all of these places will, the marketing department wants you to come in and have lunch or dinner and show you the facility. But you can do much more than that. Just one visit is not adequate in my estimation. If you find ones that you think might fit with you 3 years down the line, they're going to start inviting you to functions and things. And if you're interested in that one, go to every function. Also, some of them will allow you to stay a week in the facility, maybe for a small fee, or at least overnight or a couple days. Do your research. You're going to live there for years, and do everything you can to research this. Then one other suggestion is that think about your lifestyle. My example is I want a place with a full kitchen, but I also want to make certain that I can telephone down any day I want to and say, order from the menu and say, I'll pick it up at 5 o'clock or whatever. Lots of places will accommodate that. I don't want to eat my meals in a restaurant every single day, despite how wonderful the restaurant is. So my plan is to maybe 2 or 3 times a week eat in the restaurant. The rest of the time go down and pick up what I ordered from the menu, take it upstairs, have my glass of wine, watch television, whatever. And so that's important to me. Think ahead of time. Other people, they don't want to ever cook again. They don't have to worry about that. But think about your lifestyle before you make the move.
Jean's been researching this for years, not getting any younger, hasn't made any decisions.
That's right. Well, actually, I have kind of said to my kids now, look, and I should be probably making the move, but I said, well, if you have to move me because I haven't done it on time, this is not perfect, but this one, it meets my criteria. So that's where I'm at.
Which one?
Oh, I'm not.
You're not saying that.
I'm sorry.
No. I had a question of Jack about the financial business and why did you decide, aside from the fact that you liked the Carlsbad facility, when, at least what I understood, that La Costa Glen had a more owner-friendly kind of relationship with the money, and
Yeah, a lot of the Costa Glen treats the entrance fees as though they were, a mortgage loan, and that's a positive thing. We wanted to live in the village, on the beach, a block from the train. We knew we came close to going to La Costa Glen. And we went down, they had an apartment for us, and we were ready to sign the final papers. And my wife, who's back here, had, well, I had one question, she had two questions. My question was about the television. At that time, they didn't have any cable television, and we had a high definition set, and they said, well, most of our residents don't have high definition televisions. And I thought, well, what kind of an outfit is this? It's so technologically backward. Then we asked about the meals. If you eat breakfast at La Costa Glen, you've had your one meal for the day, even though it maybe costs a tenth of what a dinner would cost. And we said, is there any chance you'll come up with a more flexible kind of meal plan like most of the other communities, like Casa de la Campañas, which is an excellent community, or Mount Miguel Covenant Village. I just want to mention a few that aren't on the panel here, which are excellent places. What they offer, and La Costa Glen was absolutely rigid on that, but the deal breaker was the van service, because one of the things you're doing is moving there against the possibility that you may lose your mobility. You may become disabled in some way or other. And so we were looking to the time when we might not be able to drive. And so we asked about the van service, and they said, didn't they give you the schedule? And she brought out the schedule. There were 5 van trips a week. If you didn't go to the Presbyterian or the Roman Catholic Church, you didn't go to church on Sunday unless you drove. So we said, well, how can this be? You're going to have close to 1,000 people living here. How can you have only 5 van trips a week? And they said, our residents prefer to drive. That was the deal breaker for us. Right then, we knew that was not a community for us. So even though it was financially, but we felt we could afford to take the financial risk, and that was more important to us than taking a quality of life risk. You have to weigh those things. If your finances are such that you can't afford it, then you want to look at a place like Casa de la Campañas or Mount Miguel or even La Costa Glen. La Costa Glen's sort of pricey, but it's very nice.
Our representative from La Costa Glen got sick today, but sorry, she's not here.
There's a question. Question where? Oh, yeah.
I see a hand, disembodied.
Back here?
Yeah.
Are any of the places pet friendly with small pets?
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't hear the question.
Are they pet friendly?
Can you have a pet?
Oh.
Yes.
I think virtually all of them. I've never heard of one yet that didn't allow small pets. They don't allow monster dogs.
Every Friday we have a puppy party.
I've been looking for a couple of years because my dog weighs over 100 pounds. The front porch lets them in, and 2 of them have dog parks, fenced in places where you can take your dog no matter how big it is. And that's Wesley, Palms, and Frederica Manor. And that was my highest priority. But the food's good at both of them too.
Did you move into either one of them?
Not yet. I sold my house last week. So.
Oh. You're doing it in that order and then hoping that you can find a place?
No, I have, been looking, like the lady said, do it a couple of years early. I've lunched at them more than once. I haven't dined at any. Well, yes, I have, Kenny. I even had Thanksgiving dinner last year at one of them. And I feel the front porch has everything you want. But what is the one down at the beach?
Casa de Mañana.
I didn't care for their dog facilities. I didn't need to be on the beach. That's not a high priority.
Yeah, that's right. So some people, one of my friends, I don't see her here, doesn't want to live in a high rise because if the power goes out, she could be stuck. So everybody's got their little things that they look for. Big screen TV, whatever. Yeah.
What about waiting lists?
Waiting lists? I don't know.
They all have vacancies.
They have vacancies now. I think at one point they had waiting lists.
We have
yeah.
waiting lists. we're fully booked, but that's because of our location. And with the housing market, though, it's very easy to get into these places. That could change. When my wife and I came, we were, how long were we on the wait list? 2 years. 2 years.
When I looked at Nancy, and they said there's a lot of room for negotiation in price and services and all sorts of things.
Definitely.
Because there's a lot of units there, maybe more than any place else.
Well, we're about 3/4 full.
Yeah. Who else has a question?
I just want to make a comment. I didn't do a whole lot of talking today, but I have a hell of a lot of information for you. And what I've heard today from the panel just convinces me that I made the right decision. And my research 3 years ago was proven correct by listening to these other people, because I think that before you make a decision to go to any place, you ought to come out and see my place, La Vida Real. I have my cards up here, and I have cards for La Vida Real. Come up and pick one up and give me a call, and if you don't call me, call the marketing office, but I think it'd be very, very wise to see La Vida Real before you put out any money on anything else.
Yeah.
To research and move earlier rather than later.
Yes.
While you're still in good health,
Yes.
you can visit these places, you can decide, this is what I want, that's what I don't want. So many people I've seen, including those in my family, are in denial about their aging.
Yes.
Wanting health. They don't want to realize they should be driving their age, et cetera, et cetera.
There is a lot of information in San Diego County about aging in place, that is staying in your own house. But if you don't think that's a good solution for you, you're perfectly right. This would be the time to do it before it's too late. Yes?
I assume that each year the costs go up, your monthly or annual fees. Have you any control over that, where you say committees run everything? Or have you any say so? Anybody else protesting if it's too much?
We used to be called SCPH, Southern California Presbyterian Homes. We're no longer called that. We are called B Group. B because you can be whatever you want to be and become whatever you want to become. That was why we called it. They are the ones who decide. We have 34 facilities under this rubric. And they're the ones who decide what the cost of living, it would be, last year was 1.5% that it went up.
I know someone many years ago who was in Carlsbad, and it went up 9.5%, and she went into sticker shock.
9.5%?
About 15 to 20 years, 15 to 20 years ago.
Wow.
I think that's what it was.
It's 3 o'clock. Shall we stay another 15 minutes and then we'll break up? Yeah.
Is there a comprehensive source of comparison between a lot of places?
You know, after Jack spoke, we sort of formed a committee to do that, but it was really beyond our comprehension. I don't think there is a comprehensive source to compare.
I do have
something we'd like to do, but we haven't. We'd like to do in the National Continuing Care Resident Association. Oh.
Yeah. So the answer is no. It looks to me like the meeting is breaking up. So, yeah.
Could I ask a question, please?
Yeah.
Is anyone in here familiar with Masonic homes?
Sorry, there's a question here. I can't hear what you're saying. Say it again.
Does anyone know about Masonic homes?
Masonic homes.
Masonic Homes has an excellent reputation. Mel Matsumoto, who's the executive director there, is outstanding. He's a Yale graduate. You'll be very pleased.
Are you talking about a local one here?
Continuing care.
Where is it?
It's up in the Bay Area.
Oh, in the Bay Area. Is that what you mean?
They are all over. However, I'm more looking for Eastern Star, which is a part of the Masonic homes. It's the women who are involved that are not married to Masons or Shriner. Does anyone know anything about those?
Are you thinking they're in San Diego County?
The only one, I know there's one in North Carolina, there's one in Yorba Linda. I'm wondering if anyone knows anything about it.
No, I would suggest you Google it and, or call their main office and find out.
But no one is personally involved.
Jackson, they have a good
One thing you can do, you can go on to guidestar.org and get the 990 form, which is filed with the IRS. If a community has a negative net asset position, and many do, that means they're bankrupt. Under general accounting principles, they're bankrupt, and they rationalize that that's not a problem because the debt holders don't call the debt because the entrance fees are still there to sustain them. So you want to avoid any community that has a negative net asset position because that means that the liabilities are greater than the assets, and that's never a good thing in a business.
What was the website?
GuideStar.
GuideStar.org.
Yes.
GuideStar.
Stand up so that people can hear me. Everybody on the panel, for the most part, has talked about the virtues of the good life living in their facilities. And Virginia over here, I think, touched on some real issues as well as this lady over here. When you're thinking about going to these facilities, you're going to be given a sell job by the facility, by the executive director, who's really a salesperson. Okay, it's just like buying a house and having a realtor talking about all the virtues and attributes of the home you're looking at, but you never really get the behind-the-scenes story, like Charles also pointed out too, because everybody wants to buy into the best-case scenario, but you are paying the best possible dollar you own, but you're not necessarily buying into what you think you're getting, okay? There's always more behind the scene than meets the eye. And people like these folks up at the panel, I think what I'm getting is they represent the best of the best at these facilities because they're willing to step forward and talk about the facility. They're happy about it. They're obviously doers and people who are very active at their facilities. But many of you may not be very active. And many of you just want to have a nice, quiet place to live comfortably for the rest of your life. And I, for one, have to deal with a lot of the people who are not necessarily the active people, but the people who end up buying into something didn't realize what they were buying into because they didn't ask all the right questions. And maybe things were good when they moved in, but they changed. Because, for example, if you live at a facility for 6 years, or hopefully you're going to live there longer, you're going to find that a lot of your friends and the people you know are suddenly walking in using walkers. Now they're in wheelchairs. Now their health is failing them. And as the generation gets older, things will change in the facility. As baby boomers are retiring, going into these facilities, like I'm a baby boomer, but many of the people that I call on who are my age and younger than me are very incapacitated. And what happens is you end up living next to or sitting with in the dining room with miscreants or people who are sour about life now. And so you don't know what you're getting into. My suggestion would be that is if you can go there and have dinner with them, go there and have breakfast with them, do it different times of the week, different times of the month, and really absorb what you're hearing. Don't sit necessarily with the friendly people. Sit with the bitches. Sit with the people who have the place and listen to what they're saying because they will tell you what's wrong with the facility. Now, they may be one of the only ones. I go to these facilities and I hear people say, oh, the food's great. I talk to other people, the food is terrible, okay? So, I mean, it sounds like these are really nice, ideal situations, but I'm looking at about 10 facilities in front of me, but as Faye said, you know, San Diego has many facilities, and you may not end up at any of these, or you may not be able to afford any of these, and I bet there's somebody in this room who cannot afford to live at any of these facilities.
What is your profession?
Well, you might say I'm retired, but I'm an ombudsman.
You're making a very good point, and this is why I suggest, with this gentleman said, please come spend 2 days, come spend a week at no cost. You will sit with residents, you will sit anywhere you want, you'll talk to people. You are absolutely right. Come and spend time with us, with all of us.
And you will find that people have grievances and are afraid to share them or talk about them, and especially if you're a stranger, they don't know if you are a plant. Okay? You're planted by the facility to you know, route them out, because people are afraid of retaliation. And even if you're in a place where it's independent living, or it could be assisted living, it could be 98% of the staff is ideal, and they love their job and they do it, you know, in a dedicated fashion. But there may be a couple of people there working there who can retaliate.
Of what are you an ombudsman? I don't understand.
I'm sorry, why?
Of what? Of what are
I'm a
you?
long-term care ombudsman.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and if you want to get a little more insight about the facilities that you may be going to, you can contact the long-term care ombudsman program down at the county building on, what is it, on Overland, and the LTCOP, that program is part of Health and Human Services, you know, which is an agency, you know, it's a federally mandated agency for all the states. And then under them is, what is it, aging and independence.
Yeah, thanks. So we'll get to, I think we're going to stop. One more question.
If I could just give the phone number to everybody. Okay, you can just try 800-640-4661 and ask them to give you some information and direction.
Yeah, I think this has more to do with nursing homes, but I'm not sure.
No, it's all of them. The Older Americans Act of 1965 provided funding for ombudsmen. So every continuing care retirement community, every community has an ombudsman that people can go to with grievances. And you know, if you're a curmudgeon, come on down. You'll find a curmudgeon to dine with.
Before we close, I just want to say that I will be around. If anybody wants to talk to me personally, I'll be here for a while.
I just want one more question. I want you to go down the aisle and tell me what it costs for a full meal service for a month.
Okay. Full meal, monthly,
Like I had my mother-in-law who was at Frederick Manor. At that time, she had full meals, and they were wonderful. And at the time, it was $3,000 a month. No, not for just the meals, for the whole.
The whole thing, okay. Eugenia, can you give an idea with the food, what it would be at, where are you? Pacific Region.
The only thing I can tell you is that my 5 meals a month.
That's not full meal service. What is it in Frederick Manor?
It depends on the meal plan that you have, and I don't take a meal plan, so I can't give you an answer.
$3,000 per person for the month to live there and to have 3 meals a day.
Sounds like a hell of a deal.
It's possible if you're with a studio. I think you can do that.
At La Vida Real, the lowest cost, including the meals, is $2,600 for a single person. It's $3,400 for a 1-bedroom.
And that includes stay.
Includes meals.
3,600.
Yeah, and it goes all the way up to 6,000. I have the largest unit in the place because when my partner was with me, we wanted a big place. We have a 2-bedroom, a den, 1,300 square feet, and all meals, and it cost me $5,300 a month. So that's the high end. So the highest one that they list here on the price list here is $5,950. So when I hear somebody say down here that it's $3,000 for a month, hell, for $3,000 you get room and board and the whole smear.
Could I speak about St. Paul Manor?
Oh yeah, sure, by all means.
The range there, the lowest cost is less than $1,000 a month for rent, 3 meals, laundry, and cleaning. What I pay at the top of the line is $2,300 a month for similar services, plus garage parking, and I enjoy it, the view too.
You know, that's a HUD, Housing Urban Development Community, so they have some subsidies that came from the federal government that help with that. But you know, not everybody eats at McDonald's. And if you eat at a high-end restaurant, it costs you more. So that's one of the decisions that you're making in evaluating these places. How do you want to live and what are you willing to accept?
Yeah, I think that's.
Can I just?
It's more than the bare minimum.
Depends on the meal plan. $2,600 a month for 3 meals made, everything. Or you can have a different meal plan where you have only 30 meals a month if that's what you want.
Does that include staying there?
What's
That's everything.
That's everything?
That's everything. And we have 4 dining rooms where each level of care have their own dining rooms.
I understand.
Besides the entrance fee, of course. I have brochures.
About 26,000 up to 6,000, depending upon your accommodations. Yes. 2,600, sorry.
You have a whole, like, little house there, don't you, Virginia?
I do.
Yeah, and that's about 6,000 a month, right?
Well, that's my confidence.
Yeah. But so that's with meals? You
Yeah.
get your 3 meals a day?
I don't, but I'm reading what's here.
Yeah. Okay. I haven't used the oven yet.
I just want to say that La Vida Real is no buy-in, no purchasing, no contract, month to month. You pay $1,500 for your entrance fee, which is for the paperwork to set it up. There's no charge if you leave early. You just have to give them 30 days or 60 days notice, depending on what time you move in. We're 98% full all the time until just a few months ago. We were at a waiting list because it was so good. We had people on the waiting list for 3 or 4 months, but now we have 7 vacancies out of 400. So it's a pretty good place.
And Ben, how is it at Paradise?
At Paradise, I pay $3,000 a month and I have 1 meal a day. They do not offer, included in the rent, anything more than 1 meal a day. You can do less, but that's the limit. Actually, it's 31 meals per month.
And Nancy, want to say something about V? I've been there with Nancy and the food is delicious.
We get free breakfast downstairs. You can just go down and get fruit and rolls and oatmeal. It's not, you know, a huge breakfast, but that's free. And then we get a lunch or a dinner as part of our monthly fee. If you don't choose not to take that, you can drop the fee less. And they have 30 and 15 and 7 meals a month, depending. I take all 30. I can bring friends and use that as one of my meal plans. So that's a great thing. I sometimes add them up and bring my whole family over, and it works out fine.
What is your monthly fee, including the 30 meals?
It depends on the square footage of your house and whether you're single or otherwise. It's about $3,500, I think.
What's the cost at Carlsbad? We missed that.
Well, I didn't go into that. We each pay about $2,000 a month, but there's an interest rate. It's complicated. If you go to a very fine restaurant, you might pay $100 for dinner. If you go to a cheap one, you're going to pay $5. So it's a choice, and our dining service is quite high grade, and so it's not reasonable to really make that comparison. what we're not talking about here is the value proposition. You know, you're paying money to receive something. Do you receive good value for what you're paying? That's the bottom line. And if you receive good value, and if it gives you some security against the hazards of old age, heck, you know, that's something that
It's very expensive, right?
Pardon?
You're saying it's very expensive, right?
Well, it depends. It's expensive if you can't afford it. If you can afford it, it's just fine. You know, we don't all live the same.
You're not paying attention. Okay, we're going to adjourn. I think the panel will stay here for a few minutes and answer any questions you have. And I want to thank the panelists for coming.